Puss in Boots: The Last Wish shouldn't work, but it does, and I'm going to tell you why. Before I get into the video, I just want to say we are so close to reaching 10,000 subscribers. If you like this video, please consider liking and subscribing. It helps the channel grow and I'd really appreciate it. Alright, thank you. Okay, so I got a confession to make, y'all. I really like the second Puss in Boots movie.
What did he say?
I know. It's crazy to say online that you like the second Puss in Boots movie because no one has ever had this opinion, but it's the truth. I love this movie. It's got great animation, great characters, and a great story. But one of the most compelling aspects of the movie is how it deconstructs its main hero, Puss in Boots. But wait, what do I mean by that? Deconstructing is a concept that isn't new to writing, but it's essentially when you take an iconic character with a preconceived aura around them and then strip that away to reveal their biggest flaws. Now, sometimes it can be really good, which I'll talk about later in the video, but in most modern movies, it sucks. It's been happening a lot as of recently, but no studio has a worse track record of abusing this writing trope more than Lucasfilm. They've butchered my boys like Han Solo and Obi-Wan, but no one has been done dirtier, in my opinion, than Luke Skywalker. Now stop. I'm quite aware with what they did with Luke in The Last Jedi has more videos covering it than the money in the US national debt. But when talking about the narrative trope of deconstructing a hero, I have to make reference to the most infamous example, not just of modern cinema, but quite possibly of all time. I've seen how many people online say this is a terrible trope, but I don't think this is true. Case in point, The Last Wish. This completely takes apart our concept of Puss not only as a hero but as a character, reducing him to a bitter, hopeless version of his former self, only for him to return in the final act, getting his together to become a better person. So this video will be an analysis of Luke, Puss, and the exploration of the one rule you must follow when deconstructing a hero.
It's very cool to follow the rules.
Alright, so for those who don't know Puss in Boots, he's pretty badass as a character. He's a scoundrel, swashbuckler, vigilante. He steals from the rich and gives to the poor. He's a hero, an outlaw, but to all, a legend. But with all these great traits, he also has some not so great. He's very self-absorbed, willing to go headfirst into dangerous situations without regard for his own well-being. He's basically narcissistic and careless at times. The movie beautifully establishes all of these things in Puss within like the first 5 minutes. Then he's told his recklessness has finally caught up with him when it's revealed he's down to his last life, and death himself begins hunting him down. The moment he's confronted by the wolf is pure cinema, by the way. Being terrified of this dude, and rightfully so, holy shit, look at him, he runs away, wanting to give up and live the rest of his days in retirement. A pretty sad state of affairs for our favorite fearless hero. He eventually finds this map that leads him to something called the wishing star that grants you guessed it, a wish. So naturally, he goes to get his 8 lives back. He's joined by a new comrade and an old flame, and we see how Puss is much more cautious about hopping into dangerous scenarios, ones he wouldn't have thought twice about getting into before. He eventually confronts death and decides to make the most of the life he has now, and yeah, that's basically the end. Now look, even though Puss has been portrayed as this badass swordsman, or I guess swords cat, ever since Shrek 2, this arc worked so well for him to be deconstructed because the catalyst that caused him to be in this state targets fundamental flaws that were always present within his character, his recklessness and ego. To showcase the challenge of confronting death and how you've lived your life up to this point is 1, like the most metal concept for a children's movie I've ever seen, and 2, makes sense for Puss's character to learn. So when he eventually grows to appreciate the life he currently has, it doesn't feel like an out of nowhere lesson for him to learn. Now on to this piece of shit. The Last Jedi shows us that Luke, like Puss, has become a bitter and resentful old man because he couldn't save his nephew Ben from turning to the dark side. So the kid from the original trilogy, who was willing to die in order to save his father, the second most evil man in the galaxy, now becomes a hermit that turned his back on his family and the galaxy because he's sad. Now here's where I'm gonna give The Last Jedi some credit. Did you hear that? Some credit. Just a little bit. Let me cook for a second. Let me be like Remy. So Luke in the original trilogy was shown to have particular flaws. He's naive, reckless, and emotional. However, in Return of the Jedi, it appears he's gotten over these flaws, but I never thought so. I think he had just gotten better control over these traits and used them to his advantage. He's not as reckless as he was, but he is making his decision to save his father due to his emotional attachment to him. It comes across as naive in the eyes of his teachers, but he's still true to his ideals regardless. He will not kill his father, Vader. He knows there's good in him. When he eventually turns Vader to the light side, it would make sense in the progression of his character for him to believe he could save anyone. After all, he proved freaking Yoda and Obi-Wan Kenobi wrong. He's the last remaining Jedi, and it's up to him to correct the mistakes of the Order and bring about a new legacy with new values. So when he has a bad dream about his nephew turning to the dark side, he's about to kill him, but he stops himself in an instant. Only it's too late and Ben kills all of the new Jedi. Now you can have your thoughts on whether Luke igniting his lightsaber is within character or not. I'm still kind of mixed on it, even to this day. I mean, in Return of the Jedi, we see him wailing away at Vader for just suggesting the idea of turning his sister to the dark side, only for him to stop after he realizes what he's doing. He does have an impulsive nature after all. But I can also see the other side of the argument, saying that this was the moment he overcame his reckless nature, and to bring it back would regress his character. In this particular moment, I can see how people would be divided. However, where The Last Jedi completely falls apart is when it shows us Luke's actions after this event. He runs away from everything and goes to die in self-pity as the First Order takes over the galaxy. Luke would never, ever do something like this. Is he emotional at times? Yes. Is he reckless at times? Yes. But would he ever give up on trying to make things right? You see, with Puss, it makes sense for him to just give up, because when he's confronted with this traumatic realization of having one life left, he has no one and nothing to turn to for help. And while he was doing good things as a branded outlaw, it's clearly shown he's doing this to feed his own ego rather than what's quote-unquote the right thing to do. Then throughout the course of the movie, he changes these aspects of him and becomes a real hero. With Luke, him becoming a nihilistic man turning on everything he once held dear makes no sense because that was never an established trait for the character to begin with. I could see the case of him having a slight ego or being more naive about people after saving Vader. I could even see the argument being made for him igniting his lightsaber for a singular moment, but in the moment he failed Ben, the Luke we know would be doing everything in his power to make it right. He has his friends, his sister, the Republic, all on his side. His soul would be crushed and maybe he might have a crisis of faith, but one thing he would never do is just give up. That's why this movie doesn't work and comes across as offensive to the character, and why Puss in Boots works so wonderfully. Can we fix it? Yes, we can! So you know how I said in the beginning that I've seen a lot of discourse online surrounding deconstructing heroes and how people have become sick of this trope? Well, I do agree there's an oversaturation of it. I do worry that people will one day go as far as to say it's objectively bad to try this trope for a story. Now, I'm aware this is just me projecting my own concerns. I'm not saying this is objectively where the culture is heading, but I think it's nonetheless something that needs to be addressed. In cultural controversies surrounding media, there's a lot of terrible actions studios are taking when creating a product and how they respond to the backlash of said product. Cheap political pandering, advertising diversity over a good story, insulting the IP you're adapting, or calling people terrible things because they simply critiqued a project will always be wrong, and I won't defend people who do it, not looking at anyone in particular. But some tropes that are present in modern writing aren't inherently bad. It just has to be utilized properly. Shows and movies that engage in meta-commentary, deconstructing characters, or being morally ambiguous are some of my favorite pieces of fiction. Fight Club, The Dark Knight Rises, and Whiplash are just a few examples. I've talked before on this channel about how I love the show Invincible, because even though it has all of these traits of meta-commentary and moral ambiguity at times, it has good writing to back it up. Now in that video, I pretty much say we should go to more traditional and hopeful stories in entertainment just because of the current state of the world. And while I stand by that, I've seen aspects of people who critique postmodern or woke writing and will throw deconstructing heroes in with those categories. I think that's like throwing the baby out with the bathwater. It's never a joy to see our heroes in a state of misery, unless you're Spider-Man. Yeah, why do we do that to him? It's so sad. But it can be so rewarding and inspiring to see them pick themselves up and keep fighting for what's right regardless. It can make them so much more relatable, and you can tell such incredible stories with this trope. I think if you want to write something like what The Last Wish or The Last Jedi attempted, you need to understand not only how this serves the story, but what your intentions are while writing it. Is it to give shock value to an audience and get your ego stroked by like-minded individuals around you? Or are you wanting to tell a story dealing with heavy subjects, but still create something people will be moved by? Modern writing tropes are just that. They're tropes. They're tools used to tell a story. You can use it properly to enhance the experience of something, or you can use it for your own nefarious purposes. I think the latter has been happening for a while, but I hope projects like Puss in Boots: The Last Wish remind people modern tropes can still be good.